There is a quiet tragedy that almost no one notices, not because it is hidden, but because it has become normal. Every morning, millions of people wake up believing they have another day to spend. They promise themselves that tomorrow they will become disciplined. Tomorrow they will chase the dream that keeps them awake at night. Tomorrow they will become the person they secretly admire. Yet tomorrow has become the safest hiding place for wasted potential. And while they wait for the perfect moment, life quietly collects the price of their hesitation. But a very small group of people, the 1%, live by a rule that most will never understand. They know something about time that changes everything. It isn't intelligence that separates them. It isn't luck. It isn't talent. It is a truth so simple that the ordinary mind ignores it, yet so powerful that it can transform an average life into an extraordinary one. So before you allow another minute to slip through your fingers, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. What if the life you dream about isn't waiting for more effort? What if it's waiting for a completely different relationship with time? My friend, sit with that thought for a moment. Because by the time this conversation is over, you may never look at another hour of your life the same way again. You see, most people think success is built with years. They say, give me enough time and I'll become successful. But they have misunderstood the very thing they are asking for. Time has never made anyone successful. Time has only revealed who was willing to become disciplined while everyone else remained distracted. Time does not reward wishes. It rewards decisions. It magnifies habits. It exposes character. Imagine two people standing side by side. They wake up on the same morning. They breathe the same air. They're each given exactly 24 hours. One spends the day reacting to every notification, every distraction, every unnecessary conversation, every emotional impulse. The other quietly guards each hour as though it were gold hidden beneath the earth. 5 years later, they look like they lived on different planets. One calls it luck. The other calls it responsibility. And that, my friend, is where almost everyone loses the game before it even begins. The world has convinced people that time is endless. It whispers comforting lies. Relax, you're still young. There's always next year. One more weekend won't matter. Those words sound harmless, but they are among the most dangerous sentences ever spoken. Because every comfortable excuse slowly trains your mind to believe that delay has no cost. But delay always sends an invoice. Sometimes the payment is your confidence. Sometimes it is your opportunity. Sometimes it is your health. Sometimes it is the dream you never had the courage to pursue. The cruelest part is that life rarely announces what you have lost. It simply moves forward while you remain standing still. That is why the 1% think differently. They don't measure life by birthdays. They measure life by decisions. Every sunrise asks them only one question. What will you do with what has been placed in your hands today? Notice something fascinating. The people who waste the most time usually talk about having the least amount of it. They're always busy, always exhausted, always overwhelmed. Yet somehow, after an entire day has disappeared, nothing meaningful has moved forward. Being busy has become the modern disguise for being unproductive. Motion is not progress. Noise is not achievement. Activity is not accomplishment. Never confuse movement with direction. There is an enormous difference between climbing a ladder and climbing the wrong ladder. One leaves you fulfilled. The other leaves you successful in someone else's dream, while your own quietly fades into the background. You must understand something about your mind. Your mind is constantly negotiating with comfort. It does not naturally seek greatness. It seeks safety. Every morning it whispers, sleep a little longer. Every afternoon it says, start tomorrow. Every evening it promises, you'll have more energy next week. Your greatest enemy rarely arrives looking like fear. It arrives looking like comfort. Comfort smiles. Comfort sounds reasonable. Comfort never argues. It simply waits until another day has disappeared. That is why discipline feels so strange in the beginning. It is not because discipline is painful. It is because your old identity is resisting replacement. The person you're trying to become is fighting against the person you have practiced being. Most people mistake that inner resistance as a sign to stop. The 1% recognize it as proof they are finally changing. Think back to the moments in your own life when you felt most alive. It probably wasn't when everything was easy. It wasn't when you were entertained. It wasn't when you escaped responsibility. It was when you overcame something that once seemed impossible. Your confidence was never purchased. It was earned. Every difficult decision became another brick in the foundation of your character. Character is built quietly. Nobody applauds while you're waking up before sunrise. Nobody celebrates when you choose the book instead of endless scrolling. Nobody hands you a trophy because you stayed focused while everyone else became distracted. The rewards arrive much later. That delay is exactly why so few people remain consistent. Human beings crave immediate pleasure. Nature rewards delayed gratification. That single conflict explains why only a handful ever separate themselves from the crowd. You see, success is less about managing time and more about managing yourself. Time has never betrayed anyone. People betray their own priorities. They tell themselves family matters most, yet give strangers on a screen more attention than the people sitting beside them. They say health is important while feeding habits that slowly steal their future. They claim their dreams matter, but every evening they invest their greatest energy into temporary distractions. Life is always asking one silent question. Show me where your time goes, and I'll show you who you're becoming. Not who you hope to become. Not who you pretend to be. Who you are becoming. That realization can feel uncomfortable. But discomfort is often the doorway to transformation. You cannot change what you refuse to see. The mirror tells the truth whether you like the reflection or not. And the 1% have learned something remarkable. They do not fear the mirror. They seek it. Because every honest evaluation becomes another opportunity to grow. The average person protects the ego. The extraordinary person protects the future. Those are completely different priorities. Remember this. Every minute you spend arguing with reality is another minute. Reality continues without your permission. The clock does not pause while you doubt yourself. It does not slow down because you are afraid. It does not wait until you feel ready. Time keeps walking. The only question is whether you are walking with it or watching it disappear. And there is one invisible habit that silently steals more dreams than failure ever could have. It's so ordinary that almost everyone practices it every single day without realizing it. The 1% recognize this invisible thief long before success found them. And once you see it, you will never be able to ignore it again. That is where our journey continues. The invisible habit is not laziness. Most people imagine that dreams die because someone refuses to work. But that isn't what happens. Dreams usually die while a person appears productive. They answer emails. They attend meetings. They organize their desk. They watch another motivational video. They tell themselves they're preparing for greatness. Preparation becomes procrastination, wearing a respectable suit. That is why you must learn to ask a different question. Not, am I busy? Ask instead, am I moving closer to the life I promised myself? Those two questions can produce completely different answers. My friend, there comes a moment in every life when excuses become heavier than effort. Carrying regret demands more energy than carrying discipline ever will. Yet most people never discover this because they keep choosing the lighter burden today, unaware that it becomes the heavier burden tomorrow. The 1% understands something that sounds almost unfair. Every decision is creating an identity. When you wake up and keep your promise to yourself, you are not merely completing a task. You are casting a vote for the person you are becoming. Every disciplined action whispers to your subconscious, I am someone who finishes what I begin. The opposite is also true. Every promise you break sends another message deep into your mind. I cannot trust myself. That sentence is never spoken aloud. It doesn't need to be. Your subconscious hears actions far louder than words. This is why confidence cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed from another person's encouragement. It grows quietly each time your behavior agrees with your intentions. Integrity is not only about keeping your word with other people. It begins with keeping your word to yourself. Many people say they have lost motivation. No, they have lost trust in themselves. After enough broken promises, the mind stops believing future promises. It becomes skeptical. Every time you say, I'll start Monday, your own subconscious quietly replies, you've said that before. Can you see how dangerous that becomes? You are not arguing with the world anymore. You are arguing with your own identity. And identity always wins. That is why lasting change never begins with a new calendar. It begins with a new standard. Standards are different from goals. Goals tell you where you want to go. Standards decide what you refuse to tolerate along the way. The 1% do not wake up asking, what do I feel like doing? Feelings are changing clouds. Standards are mountains. Clouds drift wherever the wind carries them. Mountains remain standing through every season. Become the mountain. There will be mornings when your body feels tired, your emotions feel uncertain, and your mind searches desperately for an excuse. On those mornings, remember this: feelings are temporary visitors. Character is the permanent resident. If you obey every emotion, your life will always belong to your emotions. If you lead your emotions, your life begins to belong to your purpose. That is emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is one of the rarest forms of strength in the modern world. People often believe discipline is about saying no. They misunderstand. Discipline is actually a beautiful way of saying yes. You say yes to your future by saying no to the distractions that would steal it. You say yes to peace by saying no to chaos. You say yes to health by saying no to habits that slowly weaken your body. Every meaningful yes requires a courageous no. The world will constantly invite you to trade permanence for pleasure. It offers comfort today in exchange for fulfillment tomorrow. Most people accept the offer without negotiation. The 1% politely decline. Have you ever noticed how silence makes some people uncomfortable? The moment life becomes quiet, they reach for a screen. They search for entertainment. They need constant noise because silence forces them to meet themselves. But the 1% have a different relationship with silence. Silence is where they measure their life honestly. Silence reveals whether they are becoming the person they admire or merely pretending. Never be afraid of a quiet room. Be afraid of spending your entire life avoiding one. Because hidden inside silence are questions no distraction can answer. Who are you becoming? What are you avoiding? What dream have you postponed for so long that you have almost convinced yourself you no longer want it? Those questions are uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the birthplace of wisdom. The truth is, time does not steal your dreams. Distraction does. Not the dramatic distractions that everyone notices. The tiny ones. 5 minutes here. 10 minutes there. Another promise postponed. Another evening surrendered. One more day that felt insignificant. Life is rarely lost in giant pieces. It disappears in invisible fragments. Imagine someone handing you a priceless diamond every morning. Would you throw it into the ocean? Of course not. Yet every sunrise hands you something infinitely more valuable than a diamond. It hands you hours. The tragedy is that people protect their money more carefully than their moments. Money can return. Time never negotiates. Once an hour leaves your hands, it belongs to history forever. That realization is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken you. Because the greatest advantage the 1% possess is not that they have more hours. They simply respect the hours everyone else overlooks. Respect creates value. Neglect creates regret. And regret has a peculiar way of arriving late, when changing the past is no longer possible. There is another truth that few people are willing to face. You become like the conversations you repeat. Spend enough time around excuses, and excuses begin to sound intelligent. Spend enough time around fear, and courage starts looking irresponsible. Spend enough time around people who settle, and eventually settling feels normal. Protect your environment, not because you are weak, because you are human. The strongest tree can still struggle if planted in poisoned soil. Choose people who remind you of your potential, not your limitations. Choose voices that challenge you instead of comforting your complacency. Choose books that stretch your thinking. Choose habits that strengthen your future. Remember, every repeated choice is quietly writing the story your life will tell. One day, someone will ask how you became the person you are. Your answer will not be found in one dramatic moment. It will be found in thousands of ordinary decisions that no one else noticed. That is how greatness is built. Quietly, patiently, faithfully. While the crowd is searching for shortcuts, the 1% are building foundations. And here's the beautiful irony. The life everyone admires is almost always created by the habits that nobody applauded. So before you search for another secret, another strategy, or another miracle, ask yourself one final question. If your future were watching the way you spend today, would it thank you? Or would it beg you to stop wasting the one gift you can never earn back? Because in the next part, I want to reveal the greatest misunderstanding about success, a truth that separates those who merely dream about extraordinary lives from those who actually create them. It is a lesson so simple that most people overlook it, yet powerful enough to change every tomorrow that still belongs to you. Most people spend their lives searching for a breakthrough. They wait for one opportunity, one conversation, one lucky moment, one miraculous event that will suddenly transform everything. They believe success arrives like lightning, striking only the fortunate few, while everyone else simply watches from a distance. But let me tell you something that may completely change the way you see your life. The 1% never build their future around breakthroughs. They build it around ordinary days, because they understand a truth that almost everyone ignores. Your life is not shaped by what you do once. It is shaped by what you refuse to stop doing. Think about the rivers that carve through mountains. They are not stronger than stone because of one powerful impact. They become stronger because they return again and again with quiet persistence. The mountain eventually surrenders, not because the river shouted louder, but because it never quit flowing. That is how extraordinary lives are built. Not with dramatic moments, with relentless consistency. My friend, the world celebrates dramatic victories because they are easy to notice. But life rewards invisible discipline. Nobody sees the mornings you chose purpose over comfort. Nobody applauds the evenings when you closed the distractions and kept working while everyone else convinced themselves they deserved another break. Nobody hears the battles that happen inside your own mind when every excuse sounds reasonable. Yet those unseen victories become the visible success everyone admires years later. Never envy someone's harvest if you are unwilling to honor the seasons they endured. The tree does not become strong during sunshine alone. Its roots grow deepest during storms. Perhaps that is why your greatest struggles have not appeared to destroy you. Perhaps they have appeared to strengthen the parts of you that comfort could never reach. Sometimes life removes your certainty so that you can discover your courage. Sometimes it removes your distractions so that you finally hear your purpose. Sometimes it allows you to fail not because you are unworthy, but because success without wisdom would eventually become your greatest weakness. The 1% understand this. They no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, they quietly ask, "What is this moment trying to teach me?" Notice how different those questions feel. One creates victims, the other creates leaders. The quality of your life will always follow the quality of the questions you ask yourself. If every setback becomes proof that life is unfair, your mind will search for more evidence to support that belief. But if every setback becomes an opportunity to become wiser, stronger, calmer, and more disciplined, suddenly nothing is wasted, not even pain. Pain is an interesting teacher. Everyone wants the lesson. Very few welcome the classroom. Yet every meaningful transformation requires you to become familiar with discomfort. Growth asks for sacrifice before it offers rewards. The seed disappears before the tree appears. The caterpillar dissolves before the butterfly exists. Nature has always understood something human beings continue to resist. Transformation always looks like loss before it looks like gain. That is why so many people quit too early. They mistake the middle of the story for the ending. They see temporary struggle and assume permanent failure. But the 1% remain patient because they know that every meaningful journey contains invisible seasons where nothing appears to be happening. Roots are growing, character is forming, wisdom is deepening, and one day, without warning, everything above the surface begins to change. You have been taught to chase results. I want you to chase becoming, because results can disappear. Money can be lost, titles can be taken away, businesses can fail, popularity fades, but the person you become, that cannot be stolen. If you become disciplined, you can build again. If you become wise, you can recover. If you become resilient, you can survive any season. Success is never your greatest asset. Character is. Success simply reveals it. There is another mistake that keeps millions trapped. They compare their beginning with someone else's middle. They open their phones and measure their invisible effort against another person's visible achievement. Comparison quietly whispers, "You are behind." But comparison never tells you the whole story. It never shows the lonely mornings, the painful failures, the years of uncertainty, the nights filled with doubt. You are comparing someone's highlight reel to your private battles. That comparison will always be unfair. Run your own race, plant your own seeds, honor your own timing. An oak tree does not apologize because it grows differently than a bamboo forest. Each fulfills its purpose according to its nature. So should you. There's incredible freedom in releasing the need to impress people who will never live your life. Remember this carefully. The crowd rewards appearance. Life rewards substance. The crowd notices expensive watches. Life notices disciplined hours. The crowd admires expensive cars. Life admires valuable habits. The crowd celebrates overnight success. Life celebrates decades of quiet preparation. Choose whose applause matters. Because chasing external approval is one of the fastest ways to waste the precious time you have been given. The 1% do not wake each morning asking, "How can I impress the world?" They ask, "How can I improve myself?" That single shift changes everything. Improvement compounds. Approval disappears. Every book you read becomes another conversation with wisdom. Every disciplined morning becomes another investment in confidence. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes another brick in the foundation of self-respect. Eventually, something remarkable happens. Discipline stops feeling like discipline. It becomes identity. You no longer force yourself to act like a disciplined person. You simply are one. That is the destination, not pretending, becoming. Imagine how your life would change if your habits no longer depended on your emotions. Imagine waking up without negotiating with excuses. Imagine making decisions from purpose instead of impulse. Imagine ending each day knowing you honored the opportunities life placed before you. That peace cannot be purchased. It is earned through daily integrity, and perhaps that is the greatest reward the 1% receive. Not wealth, not recognition, not status, peace. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing they did not waste the gift of another day. When they lay their head on the pillow each night, they are not asking whether life was easy. They are asking whether they lived intentionally. That question changes everything. Because every sunrise is an invitation. Every hour is an opportunity. Every decision is another vote for the person you are becoming. And every moment you choose purpose over comfort, discipline over distraction, and growth over excuses, you quietly step closer to joining the 1%. But there's one final truth, perhaps the most powerful lesson of all. It is the truth that allows ordinary people to leave behind extraordinary legacies, even after they are gone. And once you truly understand it, you will never see another day as something to simply get through. You will see it as something sacred. That is where our journey comes to its unforgettable conclusion.